On July 10, 2025, a dramatic and intense law enforcement operation was carried out at two marijuana grow sites in Carpinteria and Camarillo, California. This was not just any raid. It turned out to be one of the largest immigration enforcement actions tied to the cannabis industry in recent years. Federal agents from the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) and U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) stormed the sites with criminal warrants in hand, facing fierce resistance as they moved in. More than 500 rioters tried to disrupt the operation. Some even threw rocks and fired guns at the officers. It was a volatile, dangerous scene filled with smoke, protests, and chaos. The operation resulted in the arrest of at least 361 illegal aliens. Among those arrested were individuals with serious criminal records, including convictions for crimes like rape, kidnapping, DUI, child molestation, and burglary. The discovery that individuals who had previously been deported from the United States were found working again at these marijuana farms in California is deeply troubling and highlights a major enforcement challenge. For instance, Roman Izquierdo, originally from Mexico, was deported back in 2006 but was later arrested working at the farm, despite his past convictions for kidnapping, attempted rape, and attempted child molestation. Similarly, Juan Duarte Velasquez, also from Mexico, who had felony convictions for rape and DUI, was found working at the site as well. These cases reveal a dangerous overlap between immigration violations and serious criminal behavior, raising public safety concerns. They also point to ongoing issues in border security and labor oversight, as these farms rely heavily on immigrant labor, including unauthorized workers who may return after deportation due to lack of alternatives or economic need. This situation exposes the complex and vulnerable nature of labor supply chains in the cannabis industry, showing that it's not just an immigration problem, but also a challenge involving criminal justice, worker exploitation, and regulatory enforcement. What makes this story even more heart-wrenching is the rescue of at least 14 migrant children from the sites. These children were found in conditions strongly suggesting forced labor, human trafficking, and exploitation. 8 of them were unaccompanied minors, some as young as 14 years old. The federal agents carefully took these vulnerable kids into protective custody, transferring unaccompanied minors to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. This was a major focus of the operation, and clearly highlights the darker side of labor abuses hidden inside the marijuana industry. The farm worker community suffered a heartbreaking tragedy during these raids. Shaami Alanis Garcia, a 57-year-old man who had devoted 10 years of his life working at the farm, died after falling 30 feet from the roof of a greenhouse while trying to escape the chaos of the raid. His family described him as the sole provider for his wife and daughter in Mexico, making his loss deeply painful and tragic. Shaami was not just a worker, he was a husband and a father, someone who left each day hoping to return safely to support his loved ones. During the raid, as federal agents in military-style gear aggressively pursued workers, Shaami climbed onto the roof in desperation and fell, suffering a broken neck, fractured skull, and severed artery. Despite an immediate medevac call and emergency medical care, he remained in critical condition and tragically passed away 2 days later. The raid's violent nature created an environment of fear and chaos among the farm workers. Several more individuals were seriously injured in the violent clashes between rioters protesting and heavily armed federal agents. Some were hospitalized, while others received treatment on site. Many workers, including some U.S. citizens, were caught in the turmoil, further heightening the tension. The raid was marked by tear gas, gunfire, and attempts by workers to evade federal officers, some climbing roofs or scaffolding to escape. This fearful panic led to dangerous situations, with Hiermes Fall being the deadliest outcome. Family members and community leaders have since demanded accountability, describing the raid as a harsh and unconstitutional assault on people simply trying to make a living. Shaami's death has left a lasting wound in the community. His family has pursued legal action seeking justice for what they see as excessive force and negligence by ICE and CBP during the operation. The incident also drew attention to broader issues of worker safety, the treatment of immigrant laborers, and the intensity of federal immigration enforcement that risks human lives in the process. Several U.S. citizens were also caught up in the chaos. 4 Americans were arrested for assaulting or resisting officers during the operation, and many others were detained for hours. Some reported being forced to erase photos and videos of the raid from their phones before being released, shedding light on the tense atmosphere and the high stakes during the enforcement action. The operation targeted facilities owned by Glass House Farms, California's largest legal marijuana producer. This company faced immediate backlash, with the raids sparking ongoing federal investigations into alleged immigration violations, child labor, and human trafficking at their sites. Glass House Farms denied knowingly employing minors and stated publicly that it complies with labor laws. However, state agencies had already been probing complaints of child labor at the farms since May, before these raids. The federal government described the raids as necessary to root out criminal activity and protect exploited children. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem called it one of the largest operations since President Trump took office, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. The raids not only aimed at immigration law enforcement but also sought to tackle the darker issues of exploitation within the agricultural and cannabis industries. After the raid, the tension between federal authorities and local communities exploded. Migrant rights advocates, local officials, and labor organizations strongly criticized the mass arrests, fearing that such a crackdown would only spread fear, deepen mistrust, and further destabilize already vulnerable immigrant communities. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass responded decisively by signing an executive directive to protect those affected. This directive requires all city departments to develop preparedness plans within 2 weeks, including training and protocols so that city employees and contractors know how to handle encounters with federal immigration agents while ensuring residents feel safe accessing city services. Mayor Bass also promised emergency cash assistance for families impacted by the raids, aiming to offer immediate relief and support. Moreover, she committed to ongoing cooperation with immigrant rights groups to provide resources and protection. In addition, the directive established a new working group, led by the LAPD, to partner with community leaders and advocates in crafting responses that balance law enforcement and immigrant protections. Meanwhile, federal courts are actively weighing the legality of expansive immigration enforcement policies underway in California, fueling a complex and heated legal and political battle over immigration rights, local sanctuary policies, and federal authority. Mayor Bass has repeatedly condemned the raids as both unlawful and chaotic, pointing to incidents where militarized federal agents operated near children's summer camps to instill fear. She has also initiated legal action against the federal government to halt the aggressive immigration crackdown in Los Angeles. The city is filing Freedom of Information Act requests seeking detailed records from ICE about the raids, including who was arrested, reasons for detention, and where detainees are being held, underscoring a push for transparency and accountability. This turbulent clash between local and federal authorities, combined with efforts for community support and legal challenges, highlights a deep divide over immigration enforcement, one that directly impacts thousands of families trying to live and work in the city with dignity and safety. Glass House Farms made sweeping changes after the raid. The company cut ties with 2 labor contractors and partnered with unions to improve labor conditions. They emphasized that most of those arrested were not direct employees but rather workers hired through contractors or unaffiliated individuals at the site. California law allows farm work by children as young as 12, with restrictions, but state law requires workers in cannabis cultivation to be at least 21 years old. This distinction left many questions about who the rescued minors were and under what conditions they were found. This raid exposed a deeply troubling intersection of immigration, exploitation, criminal activity, and the growing pains of California's booming cannabis industry. Amid the smoke bombs, gunfire, and arrests, the heartbeat of the story was about vulnerable migrant workers, adults and children, caught in a system rife with abuse. The 361 arrests, 14 children rescued, and 1 tragic death tell a powerful story that goes far beyond simple immigration enforcement. It's about justice, safety, and the ongoing fight to protect those who are too often invisible, yet absolutely essential to industries like agriculture and cannabis. This case will likely shape public debates about immigration policy, labor rights, and cannabis regulation for years to come. It raises urgent questions. How do we protect workers in legal, but hugely complicated industries? How do law enforcement balance compassion with enforcement? And how do we stop exploitation from becoming an accepted part of any supply chain? The intense drama at Carpinteria and Camarillo might have momentarily faded from the headlines, but the aftermath is far from over. Investigations continue, questions remain unanswered, and families are still searching for justice and closure. This operation is a powerful reminder that behind every statistic and news report, there are real people, real lives hanging in the balance, caught in the crossfire of enforcement, exploitation, and hopes for a better future. The story doesn't end here. It echoes on, challenging us to look deeper and demand a world where safety, dignity, and humanity come first.